Messiah can be interpreted different ways, or like when they call him master, which I thought was interesting because I kind of had a problem with that in the Chosen, and then God clarified to me. So master, which is what he has said I'm approaching, is it's not about I'm a master of somebody else. It's not you call me master because I'm better than you or bigger than you or whatever form that, slave master relationship implies. It is a master of yourself. Once you learn to control your emotions and control yourself, and you are a master of your own self, that's when you get called master. And other people call you that out of reverence for their understanding of what you've accomplished.
Hi, and welcome back to the Natalie Rustic podcast. Today's guest is a cosmic channeler, Reiki, and energy healer, past life regressionist, as well as content creator here on YouTube and author of the book, The Ascension Guide. I welcome you, Joe Martin, who today will be sharing his knowledge and tips on how to ascend, how to connect with your spirit guides, and how to master the self. So without further ado, guys, I welcome you, Joe Martin.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you here. I wanted to sort of start with a backstory for you and just give the viewers a bit of an idea as to who you are and how you got into all of this. And more importantly, how did you become an open channel?
That's a great question. So I always tell people I had like two big jumps in my awakening experience. The first one was back around the 2012 shift when everybody kind of started waking up and things were starting to shift. And I kind of, interestingly enough, I don't know if you remember being in Australia, but we had the Boston Marathon bombing in, I think it was April 2013. Something just didn't look right to me. The way they responded, there was tanks in the street, like it was just something was off. And inside of me, I was just curious, and so I started searching, and then I went down the whole like rabbit hole of conspiracy theories and all that stuff, and then you find out a plethora of information that some of it's probably true and some of it's probably not, and so you kind of go through that period. But anyway, through digging through the weeds in that process, I ended up I found a channel on YouTube called Spirit Science, and they kind of opened my eyes to a whole new world. And then from there, it was like I was just a sponge for anything I could get my hands on. So I started meditating, and early on, it's kind of funny because I had like a mediumship experience like years before I even had any idea what was happening or what I was doing. We had like cold spots in our house, and like our water would turn on sometimes, and then I was in a meditation one day, and I just heard this voice, and it said, "Do you want to talk to her?" And I was like, "Sure." And then I just heard like a woman's voice screaming. It said, "Murder, too many pills," over and over and over again. And then it went away. And then all the stuff in
Wow.
our house stopped. There was no more cold spots, no more water turning on. And so apparently somebody just had to get their message across from the other side that they had been murdered by too many pills or something. So
That's
um
incredible. Did you send them
that was
over
my
to the other side, or did you tell them to go into the bright light and or anything
back
like
then,
that?
I didn't have any idea about any of that stuff. I was so new to everything. I didn't even believe, like, I didn't believe in Jesus or God probably back then. I was probably like, I've always kind of felt like there was something more. I don't know if I would consider myself an atheist then. But I was definitely agnostic. If anything, I've always been repelled by religion. Um,
Mm.
and then, so I don't know what happened. My assumption is that she got her message across and she was able to carry on after that, because we never heard anything or had any other experiences like that. Like we'd be sitting in our basement, and it would be cold right here, but not right here or right here. And
Yeah.
then that stuff would just go away. And so that was like my first getting into spirituality. And then what year is it? 2023. So 2021, fast forward to July, I'll go back a little bit further than that. My wife, I'd always been urging her to do Reiki for years, and neither of us really knew why. I didn't even really know what Reiki was. And then she finally ended up taking a course, and it was over COVID, so everything was online. So she didn't really get to actually meet the instructor who she got her attunement from. And so some months later, they were having like a crystal convention at the place where they normally do the attunements and everything. And so we
Mm.
went down there and met her. And while we were there, I just happened to ask her, I said, do you guys do past life regressions by any chance? And she was like, yeah. And come to find out that she really didn't that much. She just kind of agreed to do it. And the rest is kind of history. So we went to do the regression, and I went through like two past lives quickly, maybe three, because I'm not exactly now, as I look back and I kind of like piece together the dots, it's like, oh, maybe that was one of my past lives and I was interpreting it as my guardian angels, because we'll
Mm,
get there. so
yeah.
um so anyways, as I'm going through the past lives, my guardian angel starts to come through and channel, and starts to give messages about myself. And by, I think it was the second or third channeling session that we did, kind of instructed us that we'd be writing the book that I wrote. And I think it ended up being 10 sessions altogether. I think maybe only 8 actual channeling sessions though, that are in the book. And it just goes through, there's a lot of personal stuff that it kind of goes through me, but I think all of it is relevant, because I think we're all kind of experiencing a similar shift in what's going on through this ascension process, and through us kind of purifying, so to speak, through our energy and, our physical bodies and all that. But anyways, so that's when I started channeling. That's when my life really took a turn. And then right at the same time, I lost my career. We kind of, as you go through this awakening, you start to lose friends and family, and everything just
Yeah,
gets
it's like a dark night of the soul, right?
yeah. And so luckily, like I say, I had it relatively easy, and I say that because I had my guidance, and I had some communication. Like now I'm pretty much like it's constant. But at that point it was still fresh, and it was kind of, I look at it like the radio, where you're getting a little static, you're not totally tuned in, and then as you get better, it starts to come in a little clearer and a little bit more concise. And back then my vibration was so fluctuating up and down, and it was hard for me to control where I was, and to be able to control that vibration to stay in contact, like I am now.
Yeah.
So it was a huge process, a huge learning process. And then I want to say it was maybe the eighth, one of eighth, maybe seventh, eighth session. And as we were coming out of the channeling session, I heard a voice tell me to call in Jesus. And so I told the lady who I wrote the book with, she's like my mentor now, Linda. I told her somebody said call in Jesus, and so she called in Jesus. And as I'm laying there, I see him come from the right, and at first I just saw it was like two hands like this, and there was like light coming out of them. And it was interesting because when I was a kid in my grandparents' house, they had a painting on their wall that was just two hands like this with white light coming out of it. And like you just knew it was like Jesus or God or whatever. And but I always thought it was kind of like metaphorical. But then when I saw this image, it was like, wow, this is like that painting. This is exactly what it's like, the hands with the light. And then he like came forward, and I could see more of his body, and him, Jesus is his self. And like when I see it, people are like, oh, what color was that? What was this? Like I see features. Like if it's like, I would imagine if somebody who wears glasses, if they took their glasses off and looked at somebody's face, and it's like, yeah, I can kind of make out a face, but I couldn't tell you specific, it's like, so but he gave, what he was doing at that time was giving me an attunement to be able to heal. And that's where now I can
Wow.
do the Reiki and stuff. So I've never actually taken a Reiki class or done anything like that. That was my initiation there.
So
So
you were just open to it from the get-go. You didn't need to study for it. Jesus is right there with you, channeling through you as a healing for
right,
others.
yeah. And
That's
so
incredible.
yeah, it still kind of like chokes me up a little bit when I think about it, because it was, especially at the time where, I'm so new to all, I didn't even believe in Jesus at that, probably until that moment. Like I thought maybe he was like a fantastic magician or something. I didn't really know what to make of it, just because of my relationship with religion, and how I had been so repelled throughout my life with, I mean, you hear about the Catholic Church and, the
Mm,
other things, and it's just like, there's not a lot good coming out of any religion anymore. And maybe there
yeah.
was at one point, but so much of it is negative, and it just feels wrong to me. Like I go to a church, and I was, a little kid, and I'd be like, this just, there's something not, I don't know what it was, but something just didn't feel right. And I didn't like being there. And so yeah, I've always had kind of even to say God or Jesus, even over these past couple of years, have taken me a little bit to get used to kind of using those names and having a different association than I used to, where it was like this religious, like, oh no, and whatever comes along with all of that baggage and stuff. So it's an
Mhm.
interesting relationship to have that, knowing and understanding from like a different perspective. And some of the things that I've read in the Bible, which I've kind of went back now because I think that the Bible does have a lot of truth in it. I think we
Mm.
just have to be able to parse through it and understand what they're really trying to say in a lot of ways, and understand, you know, it's been edited, there's been omissions, there's been additions, there's, everything in between. So understanding that, and then understanding also that there still is truth in there, and there still is a lot of valuable information that we can take in our lives. And so
Mm. I think it's quite remarkable that you can channel healing through Jesus. It's, to me, the best person to channel healing through. Um, how do you view Jesus as opposed to a Christian would view Jesus? Is he the same type of person that's depicted in the Bible to you, or would you say he's a slightly different?
I would say yes, I would say both. I think the biggest difference that I've noticed, one, and I will back up a little bit. So when I got the attunement, that was Jesus attuning me to that. When I do the healing, he's there. I wouldn't say I'm channeling him through. I've channeled other angel, like I've channeled Archangel Raphael through, where he spoke through me,
Mm,
healed through me. But I've never actually done that with Jesus. So just to clarify that. Um, but from what I know of him and from what I've seen, like I've watched, I don't know if you watch that show, The Chosen, and
yeah, I love that show.
it's a great show. The differences that I would say, and some of it I think is a little bit of a misunderstanding of the word too, which thankfully God kind of clarified that for me one day. But God, Jesus, none of these beings want to be worshipped. It is not about they're not
Mm,
here to be worshipped. They're not here to be your however you would view that person that
like
you
they
would
don't want to
view.
be bigger than you.
No, they are you, we are them, we are all one. That's how they view it. It's not that
Yeah.
they're our savior, or the Messiah can be interpreted different ways. Or like when they call him master, which I thought was interesting because I kind of had a problem with that in The Chosen, and then God clarified to me. So master, which is what he has said I'm approaching, is it's not about I'm a master of somebody else. It's not you call me master because I'm better than you or bigger than you or whatever form that, slave master relationship implies. It is a master of yourself. Once you learn to control your emotions and control yourself, and you are a master of your own self, that's when you get called master. And other people call you that out of reverence for their understanding of what you've accomplished. So
Mm,
that's a big difference between calling somebody master because they are in charge of you, or having reverence for somebody who has accomplished a great feat and has mastered themselves, so therefore they are worthy of the title master. So
yeah.
that's just a little clarification that I always thought was interesting, because I kind of had a problem with that too, because you see the way he's portrayed, and it's always about worship, or about him coming to save you, and dying for our sins, and like none of that stuff is, no. That part is
Yeah.
not accurate. What I would say is that if you want to understand what Jesus meant by, or any religious text, what the original meaning of sin was, it's a archery term. It means to miss the mark. So if righteousness means path to God, and the path to God is through us, and we sin, that means we miss the mark, right?
Mm,
It doesn't mean that we are eternally, we're damned and whatever and condemned to hell. So what it means is, if we are on the path to God and righteousness runs through us, and we sin, we miss the mark, we stray from the path of God, we get back on the path of God, and then that gets us. So if it's basically just a course correction, if you sin, then you realize, oh, this, and then so hell, we create our own hell. Hell,
yeah.
heaven and hell are the same place. It just depends on your perception. So if we stray, if we sin, if we go off the path of God, we're gonna create our own hell. If you cheat on your husband or your wife, you're gonna have your own hell in your head. If you kill somebody, you're gonna have your own hell in your head. So this is,
Yeah.
these things are trying to, the 10 commandments are not what they were understood to be. They're the 10 covenants. So when you reach God consciousness, you won't covet your neighbor's wife. You won't murder. It's not thou shalt not kill. It's thou shalt not murder, because that's two different things. Kill, there is an appropriate time to kill. If your life is threatened, if you were being abused, if some child was being, there's a time and appropriate place to kill. Murder is a different thing. So when you have these 10 covenants with God, you will not do those things just because of the consciousness level that you have reached. It's not about you breaking some commandment that he's told you to do. If he wanted you to be perfect that way, he would have just made you perfect that way. Why would he make a mistake? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that. During my podcast, I mentioned a lot of near-death experiences mention that when they see Jesus in heaven, it's not someone to bow down to. In fact, they feel like they're like really close friends, and that they're one and that they're connected. And so it's really interesting that you brought that up. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's one of the biggest, probably, as you said, comparisons with like the Bible Jesus or religious Jesus that I noticed right away. And he mentioned that, and it's in my book, the conversation that him and I had. And so he talks about, accepting that we are worthy, and that we are, if we are a fractal of God, if we are, if you understand God, God is the mind. And so God, to have experience of what the mind knows, had to create physical reality. So we incarnate in the physical to experience what the mind already knows. We experience that to gain experience and that knowledge from the experience. So if we're here to do that, all we are is everybody is a fractal of God, experiencing God in its own way through its own lens. And so there is no right, there is no wrong, there's no good, there's no evil, there just is. There's experience and there's perspective. And so when we understand that, it alleviates a lot of the stress from the world, and a lot of, when we can zoom out and just say, this is a playground for evolution. We come here to
Yeah.
evolve. I have been clarified. I've called it Earth School, which I've channeled it. It's Earth School and this other thing. And the
Yes.
clarification that, so recently I've started to talk directly to God. I used to talk to Archangel Ariah, and I've had conversations with Archangel Raphael and Michael and other angels and stuff. But as of a couple of days ago, it was like, hey, now we're talking. I was like, okay. And it was like, we're talking right now, like this clear. Um, and where was I going with that?
When you say that you channel God, and this is the
Mm.
first time that you've done it, would you say in a way that you're channeling yourself?
Well, yeah, we are God. So that's, I think,
Mm.
what I was getting at is we are all fractals of God, experiencing this whole thing in our own way. When we have
Yeah.
a thought, it's God's thought.
Yeah.
So when we can wrap our mind around that, that's when things start to change a little bit and we change perspective. And a lot of people have a hard time saying that I am God, and it's, we're a fractal, if you
Mm.
understand. So
Yeah.
it's not
It's like a drop of water in the ocean.
absolutely,
Even though
yeah.
you're still that singular drop, you're still a part of the whole ocean. So,
Right. Exactly. And God is everything. It's this computer that I'm talking, it's the everything that's everything ever been all around us at all times. And so that perspective, and then understanding that we are equal to Jesus. The reason that Jesus was better than us, and I say that in quotations, is that he mastered himself. He understood what it was to be the full encapsulation of what a human can be. And that's what
mm,
the other teachers were too, Buddha, and there's been a bunch of teachers that have come here throughout time that have all had the same messages, that have done the same things in their own way that was appropriate for their time. And
yeah.
so, I think that's where I was going with the God thing. So one thing that I've started to learn, especially through channeling God, is that there the information that you get is going to be right for you to get you to where you need to go. So
Mm,
that doesn't mean that that information is going to be right in the societal sense. It doesn't mean that it's going to be historically accurate necessarily, but it's going to be what you need to get you from point A to point B in your evolution. It's going to be the right answer for you to do what you need to do, if that makes sense to
yeah.
you.
You spoke of evolution. Now, I'm hearing a lot of things lately about ascension from 3D to 5D, and there's a lot of chaos going on. What are some tips that you can give us, or some understandings you can give us um, about the ascension symptoms? What do we need to look out for? What's going on?
Great question. So physically speaking, the third dimension and the fifth dimension, fourth dimension, all the dimensions reside, they're all here right now. It's what
Mm.
we have the ability to tune into. So I wrote a blog the other day that kind of, I think, helps to, so you can understand. So before you awaken, a good way to think of it is you're walking around. This is an AM FM radio. You're walking
Mm.
around picking up 78.8 to 107, whatever it is, and that's your bandwidth. Then you have your awakening, and this gets upgraded to satellite radio. And now you're picking up extra channels that are from way out there up in the space. And everybody else is walking around with AM FM radio. So that's 3D.
Mm.
Satellite radio is 5D. And so what it is doing is you are changing your perception of the reality that is around you at all times. So as humans, we see 2.5% thereabout of the electromagnetic spectrum. So
Mm.
that's 97.5% of everything that's around us that we can't see. And so we're starting to tune into that. We also, on the audible spectrum, I think it's 1.8% that we hear. So you think of all of those frequencies and bandwidths that we're missing out on, of all of the stuff that's going on around us now, which is
Yeah.
also some it's where someone who has schizophrenia has a hard time, because they might be seeing 2% or 3% or hearing 2%, and then we get call them crazy and put them on meds. Anyways, not to
Yeah,
get
I
too
was actually
scientific.
gonna say I don't believe schizophrenia is a thing. I've spoken
Yeah,
to a few people about this as well since doing the
yeah,
podcast. Like, no.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think they're just picking up on everything that's around us that we can't interpret, and then we say, yeah, it's not
Yeah.
there, you're crazy, and they're like, really?
Yeah, right.
So the fifth dimension is basically where our higher selves reside. So if you think of us as a physical body that has our auric layers that continues on outward, the
Mm.
higher self is in the fifth dimension. So that's what they've told me. I've integrated with my higher self. So I've integrated into the fifth dimension. I'm still
Yeah.
here looking at you, so
Yeah,
there's nothing
yeah, right.
different, but it's my mindset. It's where I am. It's that mastering yourself to get to there. So what is happening is, I'm kind of going to download right now so I can explain
No,
it.
that's awesome.
Uh, so if each of us individually have our own consciousness level, and in my book I have and you may have seen it before, it's the level of like vibrational consciousness they
Yeah,
call it.
yep, yep. I've seen that.
So at the very top is like peace and love and joy, and they kind of fluctuate back and forth between those. That's basically the fifth dimension. So when we master our emotions, I used to be a very angry person. I would very reactionary, very, yeah, all the emotions that aren't great for us.
Yeah.
And learning how to control that, learning how to react differently, learning how to be, a lot of people think the goal of life is to pursue happiness, and I would disagree and say it is to pursue peace. Happiness is a byproduct of peace. So if we pursue
Mm.
peace, we are always peaceful. Happiness will come as a byproduct of peace. And that's where the fifth dimension resides, is in peace. And so as the individual vibration rises and we raise our vibration into that higher level, so it's a faster vibration,
Mm.
it affects the collective consciousness. So you and I right now are creating a collective consciousness between the two of I. Wherever you are, wherever I am, the average of that creates our collective consciousness. So you think
Yeah.
of that on a global scale, where the whole earth is, and then some of us are poking through the top and some of us are doing the opposite, kind of an average. And as more of us ascend, as more of us rise, that average rises. And then as that average rises, the earth too rises. It rises with us. And so the people who, as that average rises, the people who can't, they got to go. And so
Yeah.
it can look
Mm.
like natural causes. It could be, whatever. It's their exit point. They're not able to rise with the ascension. And that's what happens. And that's no big deal.
And so a good tip for us today to understand this is if things are going well in our life and things are happier, our lives are more joyful, it means that we're on the right path. Is that sort of another understanding or another idea?
Yeah, I think that we've been given a really great guidance system that we ignore all too often, and that's our
Yeah.
feelings. And I don't want that to go too far, because I think that I think that a lot of things that are true in the spiritual community have been exploited in this woke community to
Yeah,
mean
yep.
something different than what it actually means. And so this whole I feel like I'm this, therefore I am, that is not what that means. But when your
Mm,
guidance system tells you that this feels wrong or this feels right, there's a reason for that. And
yeah.
so now here's the other part of this that I think is kind of tricky. We have been programmed since the day we were born on this planet to believe, think, feel in a certain particular way. One thing you will notice, I don't know if you're familiar with fasting at all, and I'm just using food as an example
Mm,
because food can be a confusing signals, right? You eat something that is terrible for you and you get a signal that it's very good. And so
yeah.
we've been programmed this way. So once you begin to fast and you get to certain stages of fasting where your kind of hunger resets your idea of food and you start to change your diet and you start to eat healthier and more real food, your
Mm,
body will then start to also, my wife and I, maybe we can get into that later. It's kind of a big thing that we've been waiting to expose to the world, but um, really changed our diet over the last several months and noticing taking like a really long break from sugar and then going back to it, and it was like I don't even,
mm, yeah,
so it
yeah.
was like the programming had been reset into where I didn't have that same signal. And now when I was thinking like, oh, I want something sweet, it was like, oh, I want an apple or like an orange or something, not a piece of cake or something like that.
Yeah.
And so I think that's part of this process too. And that's just one example. Everything's a microcosm of a macrocosm. So if we have, a mixed signal to our brain of this is good and this is what we need and this is what we were craving, then that's what we're going to crave and that's where it's going to be confused. But if once we reset that programming and we understand that we were actually craving something sweet because we needed some vitamin from a fruit or whatever it was, then everything starts to change. And then we make healthier, choices and all that along the way. So, but
Yeah.
going back to the ascension process, I think that a lot of people, so what they've kind of showed me before is if you just imagine a human and just in this size, as this energy rises, it's kind of pushing up all of the traumas, all of the fears, all of anything that is holding you back from ascending, from evolving.
Mm,
Any of that stuff that you've held from past lives, from this life, whatever it's been, it's all coming out. And if you
yeah.
can't process it, you're probably going to die. And if you can process it, then you're going to come out the other side bigger, better, stronger, and more evolved.
With your
So,
work, what you do as a past life practitioner, past life regressionist practitioner, sorry, is that a way for us to begin the healing process into helping our ascension symptoms? Like, if we do get that past life regression, is that going to help us with our traumas and heal in order to get through this?
I will say yes with an asterisk because everyone is different. So depending on what you need, that is definitely a possibility. I wouldn't
Mm,
say that everybody, like I don't think that I had any past life stuff to clear. My mission here is different this time. My mission here is not I came here to help. I came here to
yeah,
help in the ascension process. So my stuff's already been cleared. I came here to kind of awaken and to help others on this process. So all of that stuff doesn't really apply to me. And I know there's others like that as well, but there's a lot of others who do need that. And that's where I come in to do that, to help.
yeah,
So it's I would say yes and no to that. But everybody's unique. I don't want to put, and that's what I think what my wife and I do that's a little bit different than most people is we're not just Reiki, we're not just hypnotherapy. We have a Rife machine. We have an understanding of a vast array of healing. I have my third book. I just finished my second book, and my third book's done too. But third,
congratulations.
thank you. They're not out yet or anything like that. It's just finished the typing parts. But the third book is a healing guide that I've developed over this past couple of years going through this and working with clients. My past is like, I used to be excuse me, I used to be a football coach and, like I had my master's in like health science and stuff like that. So stuff I've learned from kind of the 3D and then the stuff I've learned along my own journey. And then through this journey,
Mm,
um, through helping my wife over this past year, and getting her healthy and everything. we've learned a ton, and putting this all together in a complete guide, we look at healing from the mind, body, spirit aspect. It's not just,
Yeah.
oh, you need some Reiki and you're good to go. We understand that, that was one of the things we learned. So I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but these things kind of set each other up. Last year, or about 2 weeks from now, last year, at the end of March, we got a call from Ariah, my guardian angel, to go across the country to help my sister. She was on all kinds of drugs, going to rehab, all this other stuff. My whole family was, but anyways, we drove across there, helped her, got rid of her addiction. She's doing fantastic now. And through that whole process, we kind of, we got the message, we're going out there on faith, kind of not really knowing what we even have to offer the world at that
Mm.
point. We both knew we could do Reiki, and that was about it. And we knew I was writing a book about the events that took place on the whole trip. But through the trip, we started to realize, like, healing is not just about putting your hands on people and doing Reiki. It's having a conversation and giving them a higher understanding of something. It's letting
Yeah.
them just talk and feel heard sometimes, like not even responding to them. And so we started to realize, there's this whole gamut of healing that takes place through people, and it's all different based on everybody's individual. Some people need past life regressions. Some people need spiritual regressions. Some people need to just have themselves heard for once and be able to express themselves without feeling crazy and having themselves judged. And
Yeah.
some people need the Reiki, and some people need the other advice that's in the book. Some people need to be recommended to go do a fast, and then that resets their, whole immune system, and then they're good to go. Like, so there's all of these different avenues that we have to offer that I think makes us a little bit unique, because we've kind of been put through the gamut ourselves, and we see why now. um, and well, now that we're talking about it, I guess. So my wife, we just healed her from cancer. She was dealing with cancer since,
Oh,
it's
wow.
been years apparently. But we found out officially through actually through Archangel Raphael, back in November, and never went to a doctor. We did everything 100% natural, and she's healthier and better than she's ever been in her life.
Absolutely
And so,
incredible.
yeah, and through that, through the channelings, that's when I started to channel Archangel Raphael, is when we were healing her. And he came through, he would give us information. So all of this information that I've been given has been added into this book as a complete guide. Our goal is to never have anybody go through what she went through, because it was
Yeah.
awful, especially at certain times.
And is this your
And so,
second book that you're writing right now, or yeah.
yes. So the second book takes place what I just said. It starts the day we were doing Reiki on each other. Was it March 31st last year? Yeah. And that's when I get a lot of my messages or visions and stuff like that. And that's what the whole book. So we got a call to go to California. They kind of showed me my mom, my sister, everything that was going on, showed me a map of where I was supposed to go. And they told me to document each day as the whole kind of trip transpired. So me, I'm thinking like, okay, this is cool. I'll document our trip and the people we help, and that'll be fun. And so we do that, and we ended up being gone like 27 days. We went all across the country and back and helped people across, and it was amazing trip. And I have everyday documents. So what the real cool thing about it for me anyway was, as I'm writing the book, I tried to document it as close to everything happening as possible. So I don't even know what's going to happen the next day. Like, so as I'm writing it, I'm like, oh, I guess we're going to go see tomorrow. I don't know. So it's kind of a, exciting, at least for me, I think it is. Um, and there's like pictures from our trip. So we got to go to a bunch of cool places, had some cool experiences with like nature, had, at one point I had like 8 people around me talking about Jesus and different things, and just out of random nowhere, like, so just weird things that happen. And it was very interesting. We got to help people along the way. Um, and then and through that, learning how to do the past life regressions, kind of being kind of gently nudged by each person that we kind of met along the way, like, hey, can you do this? And it's like, sure. And I don't really know how, but I'll figure it out by the time we do it. And but that was awesome, because it really opened me up to, wow, we can really do a lot more. We can really offer a whole wide array of, and me understanding from my point of view of being the person who was in the hypnosis and seeing it from that side. So I know what it's
Mm.
like on that side, and then also seeing it on the other side. And so I know kind of, and I'm being guided the whole time. So it's very easy to kind of know what to say for people, know where to take them and what they need to for that day. And that's a lot what happened with Jimmy. It was just very kind of instinctual, and Jimmy and I have become good friends since. In
Yeah.
our we were actually going to be going out there again soon to do some past life regressions for some more friends of his. But I mean, it's crazy when I hear his updates about how much he's changed and how much his life has improved since going
Mm,
through this. And it's awesome because when he came to me in the beginning, I was just hoping that I could give to him what Linda gave to me, and it's like, oh, I feel great that it's at least moving in that direction, because although the world can like crumble around you, you realize that internally things are moving in the right direction.
yeah.
But yeah, so then we got back from the trip, helped Jimmy kind of evolve my skills throughout that process. And then it came down to, my wife apparently was sick for a lot longer than I even realized. Um, and then it just got really bad towards around like October. And that's where we started to get the messages of getting her on fast, doing
Mm,
fasting, and changing her diet, and and then so learning how these diseases work and how we can prevent disease and how we can prevent people from ever having to go through these things, or go through them much quicker and much less painless, depending on where they are in their in the process. But Western medicine, it's not there yet. And I don't want to take anything away from West. There's a place and a time for Western medicine. If you break your arm, if you need trauma surgery, like that's
mm,
don't come to me. Like
yeah.
go to a doctor. But chronic illness and some of these other things that people are dealing with right now, doctors don't know what it is because they don't understand past lives. They don't understand how energy works. They don't understand how we collect things in our aura and then it makes our way into our physical
Yes.
body.
And that's
So
something
they
you
want
should
to prescribe
actually
pills.
bring up. I'm sorry to
Sure.
interrupt. When I
No, no,
find
no.
something
By all
important,
means, you interrupt whenever. I ramble sometimes.
when I find something that I'm really like into and I want to know more about, I got to jump in there. And I think it's important to talk to the viewers watching about that. So we are energetic beings. We do collect things over time, whether it be, held down emotions, things we didn't say, trauma. They all come through to the surface, but they're still there. And then there goes on to the attachments. And so these are the things that we should be talking about, especially now, because there's just so much disease, there's so much is going on today. And I think it's just really important to bring that up.
hmm So I'll give a couple of tips to help people to kind of protect their energy. I actually just wrote a blog about this yesterday. So,
Awesome.
but um, so what you were saying, just to kind of give a brief recap or understanding, everything is energy, everything. So my physical, the reason I feel physical, this table feels physical, is that energy is slowed to such a slow vibration that it feels physical to us. But if we look under a microscope, just like scientists know, quantum physics, everything's always moving and there's more space in between than there is. So
Yeah.
anyway, getting a little bit into the science part, but so there is no physicality. It's just an illusion that we perceive that there is physical reality. Um, and so our energy, as our body goes outward, we have our auric layers, and that
Mm.
becomes more etheric as it goes, fourth dimension, fifth dimension, sixth, seventh, as it goes out. um and so one way you can think of it, going back to the radio, if you turn the dial all the way to the highest that it goes, the 107, whatever it is, think of that as the 12th, 13th dimension. It's all etheric. There is no physicality. If you turn it all the way to the left to the lowest, that would be the physical. That's the most dense. So that way, radio is God. Everything is contained within the radio, but the frequencies are all within that bandwidth that you can tune into. We're in the third dimension where it's more physical, but we are multidimensional beings. So we
Mm.
have multidimensional aspects. Our higher self is a fifth dimension. Ariah is or I am a part of Ariah's 11th dimension. I don't know exactly how it works, um, but basically, I believe that we either have an aspect of ourselves in every dimension or in multiple dimensions. I'm not sure exactly, but I know
Mm.
for sure multiple, but I don't know if it's every. I would assume every. Um, but so with that being said, things like demons, which is what I dealt with for my entire life.
Mm.
Um, and you can interpret it any way you want to. This is the best way that I would interpret demons and angels. So angels are the good side. I use that in they work for God. So they have no free will based on their own free will, if that makes sense. They
Mm.
choose to align to God's will. So it takes away their free will, but they could choose to not do that if does that make sense?
Yeah,
Same thing
yeah.
with like dragons, other beings. Um, but it's the same thing with me. Like I've chosen to align my will with God's will. And so I still have free will. I could choose to do whatever I want at any time, but I choose to do what he asked me to do, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
And so the opposite of that would be a demon, would be an angel who decided not to and wanted to go see what the other side's like.
Interesting.
So just to think of it that way. That's like the fallen angel, the Lucifer story, that sort of thing. It's we have free will to do whichever we want. So if you're an etheric being in that realm, then you can go left or right, basically. Now there is limitations, and I won't get into all of that stuff, but darkness can only rise so high and all of that. But anyways, um, those beings who are in the more etheric world that we can't visually see are trying to influence us or interfere.
Yeah.
And you'll notice the difference. The negative or demons, or however you want to interpret them, are much more forceful, much more aggressive, much more tell you that you need to do this or should do this, or that you're not worthy, you're not that, whatever it is that makes you feel not good. Whereas the light or your spirit guides or angels, whoever it is, they'll be more like a sign on the wall, and they'll just suggest something. That's it.
Yep.
And they are very, very much, they don't want to interfere with your free will, which is why you don't pray to your angels or God or whoever and say, give me a better life, because what does that mean? That's up for interpretation. That's
Yeah.
who's better life? How are you interpreting that? That's too vague, too broad. Now ask something specific to, hey, can you help me raise my vibration right now? I'm feeling low. Well, that's specific, and that's, so kind of see the difference. But anyways, so when these negative entities are influencing us, when we have interactions with others who are influenced by these beings or are lower vibrations, energy can move and attach. And so if we're not protecting ourselves, energy can
Mm.
attach to it. So it's in our
Yeah.
aura. And then we don't clear it, and it starts to make its way closer, and it makes its way closer. And then when we're tired, our aura is a little bit weaker, and so it makes its way a little bit closer. And then we're mad, so our aura is even weaker, and so it makes it. And so you see how it eventually works its way into the physical. And then when you don't take care of it, or you don't acknowledge it, or whatever it is, and I can help you know whether you're acknowledging some of these things as well. Think back to any traumatic experience or anything that makes you cringe, and if you still
Yeah.
cringe when you think about it, you're not over it. And
That's
so
right.
sit there until you don't cringe anymore, and sit with that thought, and sit with why you would have that experience, and understand why you went through that. You
Mm.
went through it for a reason. Whether you can understand that now or not, every experience that we've set ourselves up through in this life is our own doing. No matter how traumatic, no matter how bad or evil we perceive that experience to be, we chose it. When you can get to that level of consciousness, then you can understand. It's a big difference of understanding. Most people, especially people who've been through traumatic things that have happened to them in their perception, not for them, they can't accept that. They can't accept how anybody would put themselves through something like that. And it can
Mm.
be hard for people to overcome that. And I can see how people could think that, but you
Yeah.
are thinking from a human perspective. Are you familiar with like the game Grand Theft Auto at all?
Are you going into simulation theory?
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So if we play a game, any game where we are loading up a character and going and having an open world experience is what the Grand Theft Auto analogy is. Do you care when that character dies in the game?
Not really. Not
Do you feel
really.
bad? Do you say, "Oh, that's tragic. I can't believe that happened in such a grotesque manner," or is it like, "Oh, I guess I'll load it up again and play it again"?
Just do it again.
So if we see it from our soul's perspective, that's what it's like. We
Yeah.
are loading up the game and we're having these experiences, and that's all it is. There is no tragedy, there is no good, there is no bad, there is just experience. And we are loading up to experience certain things and to gain the evolutionary process that we go through in that process. And we gain that knowledge, we gain that understanding. Now, here's where I was going back to the Earth School. I think that's where I got off track before. So Earth School, the way I've been clarified is it's not. So when you're in school, you advance through grade levels. You get marks on your report card and says that you're doing good or you're doing bad or what. That's not how Earth School is. There is no marks. There is no grade progression. There is no you did good, bad, or it's you did it. And we know everything from the mind. I told you God is the mind. So
Mm.
before we incarnate, we're that fractal. We know everything, and then we choose to forget so that we can experience what it's like to remember and all the things that come along the way. We're having that experience. So that's where the differentiation of Earth School. We're not here to get marks. We're not here to progress through a grade system in any sort of linear fashion. We could go 4 or 5 levels in one lifetime if we understand the right information and learn the right lessons. So there is no.
Yeah.
I think that's where the distinction is with the Earth School, where it's an easy thing for people to understand to say it that way, I think, in the beginning, but then as you get a little deeper, like I said, they kind of tell you what you need to hear at the time to get you where you need to go. So if you've heard Earth School, that's kind of the distinction as you get to that next level of understanding where yes, it is a school, except you're not learning because you already know everything. You're just remembering what you know through experience. So it's kind of
Yeah,
a
yeah. And in many near-death experiences that I interview on my podcast, they all say exactly what you just described. We don't judge, we're not judged, we only judge ourselves. And when we
right.
come here, there's nothing wrong, there's nothing right, it's just experience. And then we bring it back to God, ourselves, and
Hmm.
we just bring back the experiences that we brought from Earth.
Absolutely.
It's so simple.
Right. And
Yeah.
we've made it so much more complex through our religions and through our political systems and through everything else that kind of mucks up the whole idea. But everything happens exactly the way it's supposed to. There is
Yeah.
no, this shouldn't have happened. Everything throughout history happens exactly the way it's supposed to. Everything that happens in your life is exactly how it's supposed to. Whether
Mm,
you interpret that to be good, bad, or indifferent, it's exactly how it was supposed to be because it's your unique story and everybody has their unique story. We go back to, there's some things that people just can't, you think of the Holocaust or like Hitler and they're like, well, how could he be? And look at all the lessons in the positive. Everybody always wants to focus on the negative, but how
mm,
much lessons came out of that in the positive, how we looked at different people, how we looked at people differently. And we said it's wrong to discriminate by race or it's wrong to do this based on their
yeah.
faith or whatever it is. So there's always a good lesson that comes out of the bad. A child death, we always see that as tragic. But what about all the people that grow around them or start charities or fundraisers or do all these things that are positive? We fail to see all those things and we only focus on the negative because there's always a ripple effect to something. And what we don't understand is that sometimes people come here to incarnate just to teach us a lesson or to have that ripple effect. So it may seem tragic that a child came here and died at a young age, but what was the
Mm,
ripple effect? What came out of that? And if we can understand that that might have been their intent all along, then was it a bad thing or was it exactly how it
yeah.
was supposed to be?
It's almost to me just by observing you and the way you talk, it's almost as if you are the observer. You're up here, sort of observing the whole story. And so you're able to give us examples, knowledge, and teachings on all of these aspects. So it's really interesting to hear what you have to say. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been told that's kind of in the book too. I have that kind of a bird's eye perspective. Um,
Yeah.
but I've always been able to kind of detach and see things from other people's point of view or kind of see both people, really be able to zoom out of situations and sort of see things from that higher perspective. And I think, like I said, they've told me I've integrated with my higher self. I'm sure that helps to some degree to kind of be able to see
Mm,
that. I know that having a communication, with spirit, if you read the second book, there's some interesting bad days in there for sure. Not all. This has not been just a nice, slow, easy progression upwards. It's kind of like this, and with a a general arc upwards, but it's always up and down. And like I was just having an awful day. Like there was something in me for sure, and it was just one of those like snowball days. But as we learn to overcome those things and we learn to recognize and become aware, And I think that's the biggest thing with all of this is once you have the awareness and you are
Mm.
able to recognize, okay, I don't have these thoughts when I'm in this vibration. I do have these thoughts when I'm in that vibration. What is causing me to be here instead of there? How do I get back? And then having, like I said, I've had that kind of guidance to pull me back from the edge a couple of times where, I'm getting sucked into the human world and they're like, "Oh, wait,
Yeah.
don't forget about what you learned. Don't forget about us." And use your tools that you've been given. And since we were talking about that, so protecting yourself, we were talking about the aura and how negativity can get into us. A couple of ways we can protect against that. One, when you go out into public or anytime, I had to do this. I was very vigilant about my energy protection in the beginning because I had to be. I didn't realize
Mm.
how important, especially us who are working for the light, we are targets to be snuffed out because of our message that we have to spread, just like Jesus and all the other teachers were throughout history. Um, so to protect ourselves, we can imagine ourselves in a white ball of light, protecting our aura that has a golden shield around it that only allows divine energies to penetrate. Because we don't want to cut off everything. We want good stuff to come in. So, but we just
Yeah.
want to make sure we have our gatekeeper up, make sure we have a boundary. And that prevents, now, if you're a medium, this can prevent you from connecting with
Yeah.
others who are crossed over. So be aware of that. Set your boundaries the way you need to, but just make your intent of what you're doing. Imagine that white light, set your boundaries. I only want to be able to talk to people that I'm going to be able to help that day, whatever it is. But set your boundaries so that that should protect you when you go out. Another thing, when you come home and you've been around other people or you've been in public, Palo Santo,
Mm.
smudging with Palo Santo, sage will work. The difference between Palo Santo and sage eliminates energy, good, bad, or
Mm.
indifferent. Doesn't matter what it is, it's gone. Palo Santo transmutes. So it takes negative energy and it transmutes it into higher energy. So if you burn sage, just make sure you replace it with either like a prayer or meditation or burn something of a higher frequency, rose, something like that. Because you're basically creating a void, a vacuum of energy. So
Yeah.
anything can fill that back up. So you want to make sure you're filling it with positive energy if you're releasing the negative.
Mm.
So another, just to get on the technical side here, because everything is technical to some degree. So when we talk about negative and positive energy, it's when I say negative energy, I know you know what I'm saying. Energy
Mm.
is not good for us.
Mm.
However, there is negative and positive energy in the atmosphere, negative and positive ions. If you have a salt lamp, I have a Himalayan salt lamp sitting here. A salt lamp emits negative ions to transmute positive ions so that it's creates balance, right? We want balance in our life. We don't want to be
Yeah.
positive or negative. We want balance, yin and yang, right? So that's kind of the semantics that we have to work with when we're protecting our energy. Is we don't want to clear negative energy. We just want it to be balanced or have energy that's for our greatest and highest good. And another caveat to that. So my wife, for a good example, she got her Reiki master, I think June, something like that. And right after that is when everything really started to hit the fan because it was really pushing stuff up to the surface and accelerating the whole process. So she had been asking through this process for her greatest and highest good. Well, what is your greatest and highest good? That's your soul evolution, right? So now is your soul evolution going to be the best thing for your human evolution? Not necessarily. And what I mean by that, her going through cancer was definitely on her soul's
Mm.
greatest and highest good. She is progressing on that level immensely now. But her human, that was not a great time for her. So be careful what you ask for and clarify that if you don't want to go through, if you're not here to progress on the highest level that you can, don't ask for it. If you just want
Mm.
to coast through, if you're not here to go through all that, then don't ask for it because it will come. So ask for what's the greatest and highest good for me and my human body, perhaps. Just a
Yeah.
suggestion.
Thank you
Me,
so
I'm
much
here
for
for
sharing that. Yeah, that's very
yeah,
important. Very powerful teachings. Yeah. I wanted
yeah,
to
because
ask
it's
you, sorry. Um,
no, go ahead.
I wanted to switch gears a little here. I actually wanted to ask you a question. Since you do channel archangels, Have you seen them before? Have they made themselves known to you in physical form?
Hmm. No. Not no, I have never seen an angel like right here with my no. I have seen through meditation with my own eyes, I've seen their dimension.
Mm.
Um, I have seen like the orbs in, you
Yeah.
know, my wife will take videos and there's 10,000 orbs in them. It's crazy. But I've seen them like in videos like this while we're live. I've seen them go through my screen or other people's screen, stuff like that. But with my physical eyes, no. Now, there is another experience that is in the book that I still to this day have no idea what we did or but and there's quite a few of those that I kind of go through experiences. Like I said, I've never been through any kind of Reiki training or everything is on the job training for me. So I kind of go through experiences and then afterwards I'm like, what the hell was that? Um, but this was a time where I could literally see with my physical eyes there was something in her and it was moving. It was in her like her butt or upper butt. And it was when all this stuff was starting to get crazy. And it looked like what we said is you remember in like the old cartoons when you'd see the power like running down the power lines and like you'd see the
Yeah.
like that's what it looked like in her butt. And so I'm like doing Reiki on her and this thing's just like moving around and she's like, it's here. And I'm like, I know, I see it. Like I can tell. And so then I ask and I'm like, how do I get rid of this? And so they showed me, and I had to put one hand on her foot and one hand on her butt. And then just, I don't know how long I was there doing it. And then slowly I would take my hand and move it towards my other hand. And this thing was like sliding in her leg, like down her leg as I'm going down. And it's like squirming. And then I get to her foot and I take it and it's gone. And
Wow. Do you think that it was just like energy trying to make its way out?
my personal thoughts on it is that we did some kind of low level exorcism and it was some sort of demonic energy. I've seen darkness. Some of the, when I do Reiki, I call them my battles. And it's, you know, sometimes Archangel Michael's there, sometimes it's other angels, but it's literally a battle. There is some sort of darkness there and it fights back. And I literally, I know it sounds crazy as I'm describing it, but so usually the darkness is on the left and it'll take sometimes it's a monster looking thing. Sometimes it looks like a tornado of darkness. It's always different. Um, and the angels and myself are usually over here on the right and they always instruct me to create some sort of light weapon. Um,
Yeah.
and like as I'm saying it out loud, I'm like, this sounds insane. But, um, and so these battles are what I interpret as there's different levels of possession that happen within people. And I think infestation is like one of the lower ones. And I think that's more what when we're going back to, you know, our auric body and things working their way down into us, I think that's what that would be. And I think
Mm.
there's different levels of, excuse me, that infestation where like I've seen things that were like completely unconscious. It was just like a look like a leech, like a big, like just black, like leech, and it's just sitting there,
Mm.
like draining energy, just sucking energy, but it's not conscious of anything. It's not fighting back. It just you get rid of it and it's gone. And then
Yeah.
I've seen things that are like completely conscious of what you're doing, and they are not going easily, and having to call in. I have one example. I was doing a session on somebody, and there was like this black puddle, and I could see like it almost looked like a spider or some kind of monster looking thing. And I could see like its arm and its leg like trying to pull itself out of the puddle. And this was like one of my first encounters with Archangel Michael. And I see this thing and I'm not really knowing, this is when I first got the gift and I wasn't really sure what was going on. And so I'm seeing this and then I got the sense to call him Archangel Michael, and he comes in from the right just like a bat out of hell and starts whacking at this thing. And it was hilarious because one, the speed is in like you can't even the way that they move compared to how it's a totally different level. But so this thing, this like puddle or this monster, whatever it was, he's like whacking at it with his sword, and it just keeps moving like a whack-a-mole. Never lets go.
Oh, wow.
And then I see him, like, he gets like visibly frustrated for a second, and he takes his sword and he goes like this, and like it turns it into this like blue flame, and then he just whacks this thing, and it just exploded like an oil geyser, and all this stuff just started flowing out. Like, so that's just like one of the examples of things that have happened. But so those things can make their way in through your aura, through that thing, without protecting yourself, without clearing your energy. So it is important to do that. Now, other ways you can clear your energy to prevent stuff like that is like in the shower.
Mm,
I just wrote a blog about this too. Just imagine the water taking and cleansing your aura, washing down anything that's not for your greatest and highest good, or however you want to phrase it, down to be transmuted.
mm,
Um, Reiki is obviously a great way to get um, your all of your stuff cleaned out. I mean, if you go to a good Reiki practitioner who knows what they're doing, they should be able to open all your chakras, get them flowing properly, get all your energy working right. And then that's the biggest key to all of this too, is I don't want people to think that I am the healer. You're the
mm,
healer. I am the
yeah.
facilitator. I facilitate healing to you so that your body can heal itself. We all heal
Yeah.
ourselves. I don't heal anybody. You heal yourself. I just help you.
What's some tips that you could teach us in order to connect to our own guides? What are some modalities you could tell us to implement in our life?
Sure. The first thing I would say is pay attention, because they're already communicating with you. Most people just don't think they are. Like, my wife had a
Mm,
hard time believing and realizing, and then she started to, because the way I get communicated with is different than you might get communicated with. It's different how she gets communicated with. Some of us just get feelings. Some of us hear them talking to us, how I do. I
mm,
get visions. Um, I get feelings. When I watch TV, sometimes I notice that they're talking about exactly something in my life that happens to do with the situation I'm going through and provides a solution. There's no coincidence there. Sometimes I
yeah.
read a book that has all the answers that I was just searching for, and I was led to that book. So those are the ways that they communicate with us as well. Everybody's expecting them to sit down next to them in physical form and have a conversation with them, and that's not how it works. Uh, and like, I've kind of had, it's like I've had questions like, why do I need to read a book if I could just talk to you? And then they're like, well, you don't even remember half the stuff we say to you anyway. I'm like, oh. So because it's a weird, like the other day, I was like, when I first started talking to God, I was tranced out for a few hours, just sitting on my couch, like staring off into space. And so you're in like a different, like when I channel, I don't remember very much of what goes on. It's almost like a dream. And then as
Yeah.
people will mention things or say things, or I'll have like a memory of something, then I'll be like, oh yeah, I remember that. And then I can kind of piece together little parts of it. But if I don't have a recording or have somebody who can remember what happened, it's mostly gone. I don't really know what came through. Or so a lot of the Archangel Raphael stuff, we don't have any of it recorded. So I don't have a great recollection other than what I wrote about it and what my wife remembers. And but he mostly talked to her, asked her questions. Um, and it's interesting how each individual has like their own voice. I mean, they're speaking through me, but like I couldn't even replicate Archangel Raphael's accent if I wanted to. It's interesting. Have you ever seen Game of Thrones?
Not really, just a little bit.
There's just one character. The only reason I asked, the many-faced god, I think he was called, and he sounds similar to that accent. Um, but it's a little bit different too. But it's just interesting how when I hear it, because for me, I'm a natural skeptic. Like, all of this stuff did not come easy, and that's a big part of my first book too. Is it was kind of us like, is this really happening? Is this my imagination? And all of that stuff. And then the hardest part, I think, of accepting all of it is when, and this is going to sound weird probably to some people, but when you accept that it is your imagination, and but you realize what your imagination is, and not what we think it is on the
Mm,
probably programmed level that we understand. We think of imagination as where we go to make stuff up. Imagination is where we go to learn what is. And so
yeah.
that is where we take things from God's mind and bring it into the physical. That's what imagination is. And that's how God speaks to us. That's how the angels speak to us. But anyways, going back to your question, the other ways that you can connect, certainly the biggest one is quieting your mind, because they're
Mm,
always communicating with you in your way that you'll understand. But if our mind is too loud and we have all of our thoughts about the day, and we're worried about our job, and we're worried about getting the kids wherever, and all of these other thoughts that are in our head, you're not going to hear them. They're
mm,
talking to you. They just, you can't hear them. It's you're in a
yeah.
crowded room and someone's whispering to you.
So
It's
do
just
you
not going to
mean,
happen.
when you say quiet your mind, do you mean meditation, or do you mean just sitting down for a few minutes without thinking and just breathing?
That's So meditation is not what a lot of people think it is. Meditation is anytime you're sitting in the moment and you're in the present moment. You and I are
Mm,
meditating right now. We're in the moment. We're not thinking about what's going on tomorrow. We're having a conversation. We're meditating.
yeah.
So when I play music, I'm meditating. When I sit there with my own thoughts, I'm meditating. When I'm focusly intent on doing what I am doing in the moment, I am meditating. And so it's not this big scary, I have to go and sit somewhere with candles and I have to be on a mountain. Well, we don't need to do all that stuff. Like, we just need to be present. And so many of us are thinking about yesterday. Oh, I shouldn't have said this. I shouldn't have done that. I wish I wouldn't have done this. Or they're thinking about tomorrow. The bills are due. I got to get groceries. I got to pick up the kids. I got to do this.
Yeah.
When are you thinking about right now? And really, when you're thinking about right now, you're not thinking. And then when you're not thinking, then you can hear.
Well,
So
Joe, I wanted to thank you so much for coming on the podcast today to share your background story, what you do, how you help others, and just give us tips and knowledge and insights on how to connect and how to understand to ascend. And so I really appreciate you coming here and sharing your knowledge with us today.
absolutely. I'm so glad that you had me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And before we end the podcast, is there a positive message that you can leave the viewers today?
One thing I would like to say, I don't know if it's a positive message, but maybe you could frame it into being positive yourself, where there is a lot going on in the world today. And I've said before, we are both in heaven and hell at the same time.
Mm,
But wherever we focus our attention is where we reside. So, with that, what I'm saying is, if you focus on all the bad in the world, where do you think you're going to be? If you
yeah.
focus on all the good in the world, where do you think you're going to be? I don't live in the world where all of this stuff is happening. We may interact. I don't live in the world where Russia and Ukraine are at war. I don't live in the world where
Mm,
pedophiles are ruling the world. I don't live in that world anymore. So
mm,
join me, all of you
yeah.
out there. And it's really beautiful here. There's no war, there's no chaos, there's only peace. And everybody's welcome. You just have to find it. And it's within you, and it's possible. You just have to quiet your mind and learn to love yourself.